Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your hurricane outlook and discussion for Friday, May 18th, 2018. Not a lot to talk about in the tropics. No activity expected in the Atlantic Basin. Of course, it's not quite hurricane season on the calendar for this area, but as you know, there has been a lot of talk about what the models have been showing, at least some of the models. I'll get to that in a moment. The Eastern Pacific hurricane season has begun, and here too we don't have anything expected to develop. If we look at the satellite picture out here, for the East Pac, this is the coast of Mexico, the Baja Peninsula, etc. And then here is Hawaii. And of course, we've had a lot of talk about Hawaii. It's been in the news because of Kilauea, the volcano, and the fissures that have opened up. So luckily, no tropical disturbances coming along to rain and make things worse. I guess if you have lava and ash flows, or not necessarily ash flows yet, but these explosions, you don't need any tropical systems on top of that. Volcanoes, I guess, are enough. One natural disaster at a time. But seriously, we're going to be monitoring this because, it is hurricane season, and the Central Pacific is vulnerable, and anything that comes close to Hawaii usually is a big rain threat instead of wind or anything like that. There are exceptions like Aniki back in 1992, but at least for now, everything is nice and calm in a tropical convergent zone, relatively tame for now and intact way down south close to the equator and about 10 degrees north of the equator. If we look at the vorticity, this is a neat product from the University of Wisconsin. Why do they care about hurricanes up there? Well, you have these different universities around the world, not just the United States, and they have different departments: atmospheric science, and meteorology, engineering, whatever, climatology. And within those departments, you have different divisions that can use these satellite tools that are out there, and they develop them themselves in research grade levels. And this is just one such case, and it happens to be up in one of the northern tier states in Wisconsin, and the University of Wisconsin Cooperative Institute for Meteorological Satellite Studies is a wonderful tool, and they produce the tool from there, and this is one of them. It's the vorticity signature at about 850 millibars in the atmosphere. It's about 5,000 feet up, and this shows us what I like to look for when we kind of play detective and we're trying to sniff out evidence for developing tropical cyclones. And you can use this for any type of storm system. But down here in the tropics, I am looking to see if there's anything roundish in appearance. Not amorphous in shape like that, or some of this coming up here. These are all areas of vorticity and energy and spin in the atmosphere. But a lot of these are linear or along a great distance. I'm looking to see if there's anything trying to bundle all that heat that's residing down here. And you see a few areas that try to pop up, and then you have to see, well, they're part of a larger area, so they're really not going to develop into anything. And as the season progresses, you'll see how this changes, or go back and look through some videos that I've done in the past. There's no way to really tag that. Which video did he talk about vorticity where I could actually see it? I don't know. You think about Irma and maybe Harvey last year, but as the season progresses, you shall see, probably in the Eastern Pacific first. So moving on, nothing in the East Pac to worry about. In the tropical Atlantic, of course, out here, really nothing going on. Pretty healthy tropical wave that has moved off the west coast of Africa, which is right here. And we'll watch this. The Atlantic Basin out here, all this area is much cooler than normal sea surface temperature-wise. I don't think it's much cooler than normal, but it's definitely nowhere near as warm as it was this time last year. But these robust tropical waves, as they come off, if they're going to not develop out here, maybe this is too hostile. Maybe they develop when they get over in this region, or if they migrate farther to the north. Again, just something to watch. You're going to hear a lot more about the Atlantic not being as favorable nearly as last year, and people are going to say that equates to a quieter season. Well, that might mean less overall activity, but that doesn't tell us about what does form, where it goes, or how strong it'll be when it gets there. We had a lot of activity last year, and I say, quote, only a handful of those hurricanes actually impacted land. It just happened to be direct hits. You know, you think about Harvey, and then Irma, and Jose to an extent, and Maria. So if you and Nate, of course. So if you took Jose out, and you took Nate, which was a Category 1 into Mississippi, I'm not downplaying it, but let's just look at Harvey, Irma, and Maria. 3 out of last year's storms affected on a high impact level. That's not very many. 3, right? You know, so there could have only been 3, and they could have all hit those same places, I guess. I'm just saying, be careful when you hear of a quiet season, because you never know what it could mean for you, and this is a great example of that. Let me color this blue. So this big fetch of moisture all the way up into the Ohio Valley and the Northeast, Mid-Atlantic. Where's that coming from? Well, that's tapped deep into the tropics down here in the Southwest Caribbean. And heavy rainfall is a big problem. I talk about that a lot. You know, the wind gets the biggest headline, the storm surge secondary, probably should be reversed in my opinion. And then rainfall just kind of gets, well, I'm left behind. And look what happens. We have Harvey last year. I know I talked about this yesterday, but we have to think of these impacts as being what we need to look at, not just the category or, oh, it's not going to be a hurricane or whatever, I'm not going to pay attention to it. Doesn't work that way. Rainfall can be bad if there's too much of it. So anyway, this is all coming out of the deep tropics, funneling up. Will this congeal into something over the next few days? Well, let's take a look. Climatologically speaking, this time frame, the 11th through the 20th, really not much activity down there. Also, I showed this yesterday, just a refresher course. And then if we move forward in time, the last third of the month of May, the Genesis points, again, just a few times in history, down in the Caribbean, you know, maybe this one here south of Haiti, but really, if you want to call it a concentration, 5 instances, and you can just take the one in the Gulf out, so there's 4 in this long time frame, all right? So there's not much record, not much to go on, not much, as they say, climatology, to set a precedent for something developing in the last part of May. It's not until June and July and beyond, of course, that things get busy. So the bottom line is it's pretty rare. So instead of going through the GFS and what's the Euro show, what does this model show, that's pointless because there's really nothing down there at the moment. And let me just show you this real quick. The vorticity signature of the Southwest Caribbean and vicinity. A little bit of energy trying to bundle, but nothing substantial, nothing that catches my eye. And there's a lot more in the way of energy and vorticity up here along this stalled frontal boundary. And actually you can see the outline of the Bermuda High if you look hard enough, because there's an absence of vorticity or energy. You get this sort of ring of fire. Hey, we've talked about that with the volcano stuff, even though Hawaii is not part of that. Did you know that? Google it. It's true. Around the edge of these ridges, though, you do get this sort of ring of fire phenomenon, lit up from showers and thunderstorms, but nothing bundling down in the deep tropics. All right? So, again, we go back to this time frame, not much to base it on, so there's not much concern anyway. And then we look at, instead of one run, well, what did the 12Z run say? Now, when we have a developed, fully going system like Irma or Maria, it is helpful to look at the deterministic model, especially 5 to 7 days, because it's going to be pretty good. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be pretty good. 10 days out, no. You know, that's really kind of, I won't say random, but it's less reliable. 5 days to 7 days is all I'm really willing to talk about on a deterministic model, because that's the limit of their accuracy in my experience and my opinion. So we look at the ensembles. All right, the models are run with different perturbations or changes in the initial conditions to get different outcomes. And in the case of the global forecast system, we have 20 members, the operational and then 19 others. I think that's correct. And the European is 51. I think the first is the operational, and then there are the 50 ensemble members. Then you have like a control run, all sorts of variables, okay? So look at the ensembles, and that's what this is, the Ensemble Forecast System, the GEFS. This is from Levi Cowan's website. Grad student at Florida State University. When he gets into the real world, I'm not saying Florida State's not the real world, but when he's working somewhere, wow, I can't wait for that. I think a lot of us would agree. But I want to give credit where credit is due that he created this map. Okay, what it shows is this bullseye. Well, what's that? Well, we're looking at the pressure anomaly based on all those members of the GFS from the 12Z run today. What does it show? It shows a concentration of lower pressures against the norm or the mean. Remember that? The average, right? And it's centered over Florida at about a week out. So that's the takeaway here, that some kind of lower pressure against the averages in the atmosphere is probably going to try to come out of the Caribbean and maybe move its way up towards the Florida Peninsula. So the first thing that I would be thinking about is not, ooh, a hurricane's coming or a tropical storm. I would be thinking rain, a lot of rain possible. That's what we need to be focusing on. If it were later in the season where the energy sources were higher and this is important, climatology was more on the side of stronger development, then I would be more concerned about the other impacts, wind and storm surge. Remember, there is a tremendous amount of moisture available down here. Any kind of lowering of the pressures, convergence in the atmosphere to create a storm system, whatever it is, could lead to a lot of heavy rain. So let's focus on that for now over the next several days. Again, nothing happening just yet, but watch as this takes shape. You're going to see this streamer kind of come out and these different impulses that'll look like that and that latched onto there like leeches. And they will, instead of sucking the blood out of something, they're going to unleash a lot of rainfall. And that's probably what's going to happen. With some wind, certainly, and agitated sea state around, but this focus on will there be a hurricane or not, it's like if it's not a hurricane, I'm not going to worry about it. We really, really have to change that, and that's what I try to do, is educate you beyond what you see on social media where somebody posts a singular picture of an image from a map showing a hurricane at time X and in place Y. Right? We have to be careful, okay? All right. Also, this. It's just not favorable out there. Not at all. All of this red cutting through. We have this sharp trough right here. All of this, another great product from the University of Wisconsin. Strong upper-level winds, also typical of late May. It's late May. It's not August, although it might look like this in August, according to some of the guidance. You never know. Could be one of those seasons where there's not much to track, but what does form, you better look out, especially if it's close to land. But we'll talk about that later on. I am going to do a June 1st live broadcast, for the lack of a better word. Probably going to do like 2 of them, one on YouTube and one on Facebook, and we'll talk about that as we get closer. It's almost time, though, right? But yeah, June 1st, kind of the day one, as I call it, and I think that's a neat name for it. Day one, because hurricane season's 183 days long. So what's day one and day 183? How do they compare to each other when it's all said and done? We'll start on June 1st. That's a Friday, and I'll talk about that, exactly when and so forth. And again, probably on YouTube first and then Facebook Live, or I'll do it on YouTube and then rebroadcast it on Facebook Live. Who knows? Coming up, though. All right, have a great weekend out there. I will have an update tomorrow, probably in the mid-morning hours, something like that, just to kind of take a look at what's happening, and we'll go from there. But I'm not too worried about anything developing wind and surge-wise, in other words, hurricane, but I am worried about the potential for excessive rain continuing for portions of Florida. That's my number one issue right now. Will it happen? Well, that's what this is all about. We have to see how the story continues to unfold. Again, have a wonderful weekend ahead. I'm Mark Sutta. Thank you for watching. HurricaneTrack.com, of course. We'll talk again tomorrow.